Matt Bauer here from Bauer Tree Equipment. We're going to go over a DC1317 or DC1217, pretty much identical units. Service points, grease points, basic service stuff. And this is going out to Colin. Hope you enjoy this chipper. This baby is yours. So, starting with the startup. Ignition key. This one has a glow plug on the left. That's a start position. This is your Murphy switch that you need to hold down to override the Murphy shutoffs in order to start it. So you hold down the red button and give it a crank. And then once it starts, keep holding it down for a few seconds until you have oil pressure, and then you're good to go. Got your clutch right here. Got your throttle right there. When you warm this thing up, give it some time. Give it 5 minutes or so before you engage the clutch. Engage the clutch at an idle. You do it slowly, and then let the whole thing warm up for a little bit before you start chipping. Don't just jump into it and start chipping away. Your air cleaner, pop it on either side. There are 2 air cleaners in there. Keep them clean. Air works great for pushing out all the old dirt, and replace them as needed. Just going to point this out. Right back here is a little valve. When you run this thing out of fuel, you need to turn that valve counterclockwise all the way open, and this will purge the air out of the system. And then you crank it, not pushing down the Murphy switch. Don't engage the Murphy switch. That will keep the fuel valve, which is right here, engaged, and won't allow any fuel to the injectors. And what this is going to do is clear the line, clear your fuel line from the fuel filter right here all the way through the system, get the air out of the line. And you kind of need to do that, otherwise you're cranking away with air in the lines, and you're not going to be able to open up those injectors. That's your oil filter, fuel filter, hydraulic pump, inline fuel filter. On these, I don't know, I think a lot of times you should just get rid of them. They don't really do much good. This right here is your dipstick. This is your throttle plate. That's your injector pump. Anyway, over here on the right is where you check your coolant. It's your radiator, coolant bottle. Make sure it's about half full. A lot of guys ignore that, and you shouldn't. You want to make sure you have coolant. There's your battery. There is a grease point right here. I don't know if you can see that. That's a PTO. This is your shaft grease point, and it looks like we need to replace that Zerk fitting. And that's about it here. Most important points are your PTO, your disc bearing on the outboard, and then on the other side, there's your disc bearing in there, but the grease fitting for it is on the other side of the chipper. You're going to keep those greased. Every couple of days, give it a few shots. Every couple of months, take the cover off, clean out the excess grease, make sure it's taking it well. I like to grease these where they're spinning, and that's generally a good idea, but not that important, as long as you continually grease it. Your bed knife is right here. That's where you adjust it, and instructions to do that are in the manual. This is, where do we have it? Right there. Okay, that is the port where this rod goes to stop the disc from spinning when you're changing the blades. You get to the blades right here. Take those bolts off. There's a bolt right there on the other side. Fold the whole thing back and you can get to the disc. Up here you have your chip chute, and that's a chip chute lock pin. This is disengaged all the way down, and then all the way up is engaged. So you want to make sure that pin is in there. I do it right, but it takes 2 hands, and I don't have 2 hands right now. Another grease point right here. See that? Right, where is it? There it is. And there's another one right there. You want to remember to keep this stuff greased. Down here you have your roller bearings. They're less important to grease, but still important. These are holding grease real nice. There are a couple more Zerk fittings here that are for the slide mechanism. You know, you hit them every once in a while. There's another one. You don't want to over-grease these bearings. You don't want to be pumping the grease out of the seals. A little bit seeping out is good. A lot is not good. What else do we have? Here's your control valve, your main control valve. And this is your emergency. This green bar right here. You pull it, and it's going to move that valve and shut off the hydraulics. You have to reset it in order for those feed wheels to spin. That's back here, right? And there's the business end of it. Don't need to open that up. More grease fittings on this side. There, down here. These bearings took grease really well. This is one thing that's nifty about Altec. They have a little port here, quick connect port. If you get yourself the right fitting for it, and a right there, it's one of those, and a pressure gauge, 3,000 pound pressure gauge, you can check your hydraulic pressure real easy that way. Right here, that's for the inboard disc bearing. Here's another little thing. These plastic sliders are replaceable. They do wear out, but it takes thousands of hours to wear them out. And another thing is the cradle here, the feed wheel cradle. It's hollow, and sometimes material gets wrapped around and shoved up in there, and you have to clean it out, which you do by pulling the springs off and taking the straps off and lifting it up all the way. It's kind of rare for that to happen, but it does happen. Hydraulic tank with the gauge and a temperature gauge. That's really good. And in here is your hydraulic filter, which you can pretty much only get from Altec. I've tried to find the company that will sell them. It's Icron, and they're an Italian company, and they simply do not sell to anyone other than their dealers. And there are only a few of them out there, the guys who made this tank primarily. There's your fuel tank with its gauge. These caps do lock, or I mean they do get clogged so that they don't suck air the way they're supposed to. So you want to make sure you keep your cap clean and unobstructed. One customer called a little while ago, said he was having trouble with the machine and the tank was collapsing in. That's because the breather on that cap is failing. The other side of the engine, just a starter, and this thing has a brand new turbo in it. Nothing to see there really. Here's another little thing that few people talk about. There is under here, there is a flexible joint. And that kind of takes the stress off of the muffler. It doesn't crack as much when they're there, but they do tend to leak and they do tend to wear out. This one actually wore out to the point it was blowing little hot particles out of the exhaust and into the filter, which is right here. There is an exhaust filter in here, a spark arrestor, which requires you to remove the tailpipe and remove that and clean that out ever so often. and for some reason you seem to be losing power and it's kind of weird and not sure what the problem is, first place you want to look is right in there, especially if the thing blows black smoke because it's getting too much fuel, which a lot of these do, including this one. There's your radiator. Keep it clean. This has a pre-screen before you hit the radiator. Sometimes it's a good idea just to take it off and get it out of the way. I use a pressure washer, and when you pressure wash a radiator, you want to hit it at a direct 90-degree angle all the time. If you take it from an angle like this, what you're going to do is bend down those little fins and jack up the radiator. You need to be able to blow clear through. Air is also good, but I like to use a pressure washer. Quite often I use both. What else do we have here? That's just your breakaway switch down here. You got brand new chains on this one. Got a 7-way light plug. There's your deflector. That's about it. You got your wheel bearings you got to maintain. Good idea to take a look at them. This little rubber cap here, these are EZLube bearings, so they got a grease fitting. You can hit those with a little bit of grease every once in a while. Every couple of years, it's a real good idea to pull the drum off and clean out your bearings and grease them by hand and put it all back together. You don't want to get so much grease in your hub that those bearings cannot cool down when they get hot. There needs to be a certain amount of airspace. So EZLube is not my preferred because people tend to over-grease them. And again, too much grease can be a bad thing. So just a couple of shots every couple of months on those things. If you're planning on taking a long trip, you might want to take a closer look into them. We've looked at these. It's on the spec sheet. I'm not sure what we did to them, but they're good. And I think that's probably it, except for when you're taking off, when you do a job and you turn your chip chute and you set the pin and you chip in, and then you get in your truck and you're going to go home, you got a checklist. First checklist is come over, make sure the chute is where it's supposed to be and that the pin is set. If that pin is in the open position over here, the chute can spin around, and if it happens to spin around while you're driving by a semi-truck or getting pretty close to a telephone pole, you will bash the thing right off its mount. And I've seen that happen. You also want to check to make sure your light plug's plugged in, your chains are attached, your hitch is pinned, and make sure that your tongue jack is up. These are things that people forget. They come in with bent to hell tongue jacks all the time, and chains that have been dragging so bad that they're worn clear through. That's what you want to do. Make sure your table is back up. It's a good idea to check the lights every once in a while. Oh, one more thing. Two more things. There's a clear out table right here. There's an access point for clearing out debris that's under the lower feed roller. A lot of guys will operate these with that open because you get a lot of resistance as material accumulates in there. But keeping it closed leaves less of a mess to clean up. This one's actually removable. There's a bolt on the other side. You simply pull it, pull the whole thing out, and you can put it aside, especially if you're doing rural work, and the machine will actually operate better. You do have a jack point right here, which is nice to have if you're going to chip with this thing disconnected from the truck. And if you put a hitch here or a jack here, you can also use it to mount up here, and you can lift up the feed roller with it if you get a clog, which can happen with these. And another thing that I just kind of figured out a little while ago is if you say you have a whole bunch of 10-inch diameter stuff, this thing isn't going to chip it all that well because it's real close to its capacity. So if you had a pile of big wood, you could connect the jack to that post, jack it up about 4 inches or so the material will feed under the feed roller and chip away. You don't need it to drop all the way down with big wood. That will make your life a whole lot easier than trying to wedge little pieces of wood in there just to get the big wood in. But yeah, that's kind of how to make this thing work. And I think that's it. Been 15 minutes, long video. I'm going to come around here. Hopefully we're focused. Colin, enjoy. And if anyone has any questions, just email me or go to bowertree.com and email me from my website, and I'll be happy to answer your questions. All right, have a good day.